welcome to Volume 3, Episode 7 of The Talent Show, powered by TTEC. I'm your host today, Sierra Sanchez. This 2022 will be coming to you every other Thursday at noon Eastern to focus on TTEC's most valuable asset, its talent. The people who bring the skills, the drive, and the life to TTEC. After all, people are at the heart of the TTEC human experience elevated. That being said, we love to hear a little bit from everyone out there. Drop a message in the comments and let us know where you're tuning in from. I don't know if you guys have watched previous episodes, but we always have a very, very global audience. Last week we had Parul and Kruti from our last episode. We had from India, so we had a very international audience with that one. Today we have a guest from Mexico City, and so I'm hoping we have a super international audience as well. Here in the US, just a few other things while you guys are all typing in the comments. It is Arab American Heritage Month, which we're excited to be celebrating across social. We have some fun trivia going on Instagram. We have a fun playlist. So please check out that. Also, oh wow, there are so many comments. Also, before we head over to these comments, we had a very exciting feature in Times Square by NASDAQ. Our TTEC ESG report was highlighted and celebrated. That is on our LinkedIn page. So make sure it's a super exciting moment. So share enjoy there and go ahead and like and share it. So let's hop over to comments. Oh my goodness. Okay. We've got India, Denver, hello, Mississippi, Alabama, Greece, Montreal. Oh my gosh. Capgemini, I would love to hear Poland, Kansas City, Dublin, Ontario, Virginia. Thank you all for tuning in today. We're so excited you are here because on today's episode, we're talking to someone who is building a whole TTEC training universe. So having joined TTEC a year ago, our guest studied the newer biology of learning, biological predispositions for learning, memory research, and he has a PhD in neuroscience of language. Lots of education to bring to the table. He is currently and carefully building a team that is focused on putting our agent at the heart of the learning experience. We are pleased to welcome Dominik Rus, the Executive Director of Learning and Development, to the TTEC Talent Show. Thanks for being here, Dominik.
Thank you, Sierra. Thanks for the invitation.
We're so excited to have you because you have, the TTEC world universe is so large. There's so many different departments, and it's kind of fun when we, cross over and we can get so, for example, I'm in marketing. We get so integrated in our own world, but to hear about what's going on across in a whole other department, like we're not completely involved in. And so I'm very excited for you to share what's going on. And I know you have a very interesting educational journey. So tell us about what you studied and how it applies to the BPO space.
Of course. And thanks for having me, Sierra. I appreciate it. I'm super excited to be sharing some of my experience and my knowledge here with all the participants today. Welcome, everyone. I've had a very unusual career path for someone who ended up in training in a BPO space, right? You could say. I've always been really passionate about learning, teaching, training, education ever since I was little. And I remember I was in my probably last year, I was a senior in high school, and I came across this article by Noam Chomsky on the innate predispositions for language and language learning. And since I was really interested in language learning and learning in general, I found it kind of really interesting, and I really wanted to dig deeper into, what's this innate predisposition all about? What is it? And how can we really tap into the neurobiological, even neurochemical, when it comes to learning and training, right? Which a lot of people would not go into. So I decided to pursue my studies in linguistics and language learning. But sure enough, in my very first year, I was still a junior in college, and I really realized that the social component is not that much for me. I'm really interested in the biological aspects of learning, not just the social, not just the environment, if you will, right? And I was always really interested in why is it that some people learn faster and better, even if all the other conditions are completely the same, right? They have the same environment, the same textbook, the same trainer, the same training methodology, the learning assets, yet the outcome is very different, right? You have people on, all over the place when it comes to the outcome, educational outcome, right? Or academic outcome, if you will. So I was really interested in that. And I decided to go into more of this uncharted territory of neurobiology of language learning and learning in general. And I started researching infants and kids, how they acquire language and how they learn, and what are the cognitive neurobiological predispositions for that. And then I went from kids to adults, and I ended up being a consultant for a couple of companies, for a couple of training companies. So, and that's how I ended up in the BPO space. I was in my second year doing my PhD at Georgetown in DC, and I was invited to Panama City, Panama, to give a lecture on the neuroscience of learning. And it was a blast. And I kind of, realized we in the academia are kind of living in this little bubble. And we do research and we publish, we go to the symposia, we go to conferences, but we don't really interact with the corporate world. And to be honest, very little of that scientific evidence-based learning, if you will, kind of percolates into the training environment in the corporate world. So I thought, hey, this is my mission on this planet. I really want to be this bridge builder, bridge maker, right? Kind of bridging the academia and the scientific evidence behind learning and the corporate world, so that our trainers, our training managers, our training professionals can be better, and most of all, their learners can learn better, right? So that's how I ended up. I ended up working for a big training center in Panama City, Panama, and one of the projects was to redesign the curriculum for a call center, for a contact center, for a local call center, right? And it was a huge undertaking for me, right? I did not know anything about call centers. So here I was kind of thrown into this wild environment of a call center with a lot of attrition, people coming in and going. And I thought, man, this is so difficult, right? And I realized, Sierra, that a call center really is a big training factory, because it's so dynamic. There's so many changes. There's a lot of attrition. Usually there's a lot of people coming in and leaving. So you're constantly, training people, you're constantly upskilling them, reskilling them, or even right skilling them. So I think that was the exciting part. And I started working for this BPO company a few months later, and I had a lot of fun. It was my very first learning school, if you will. I was thrown in this crazy BPO environment as a training manager for the site, as a site-wide training manager. And I was promoted to a director of training and development. And I oversaw not only training, but also language training, as we call it back then. And then I left the BPO space, Sierra, for several years. I went into the airline industry, and I came back last year, and I'm super happy to be back in the BPO space. I missed it, to be honest. And what's really interesting, very little has changed in the past 8 to 10 years. Yes, the technology has changed a lot, but the way training professionals in the BPO space approach learning and training is still very much like it was 10 years ago. I used to call it death by PowerPoint, in that stand-up brick and mortar environment and that setup, that kind of old school setup. And you know what happened when the pandemic hit? We went from this death by PowerPoint to death by PowerPoint through Zoom or Slack or Teams, right? So we're using a different channel, but the learning assets, the approach, the methods, the methodology is still exactly the same. So I thought, man, this is going to be a great challenge for me. And I think I can contribute a lot because of all my background in cognitive neuroscience and cognitive psychology. And this is where I am. I'm a TTEC now. I've been here for a year. as the Global Head of Learning and Development, Innovation and Technology. I oversee only the innovation and technology piece, and it's been super exciting and super rewarding for the past year.
That's amazing. And I'm smiling extra big and kind of laughing because PowerPoint is that is not my favorite. So
yeah. Did you know it's been around for 35 years?
PowerPoint
is turning 35 years. Yeah, it's turning 35 years and we still swear by this technology. So the first thing I wanted to do was like, guys, no PowerPoint. No PowerPoint whatsoever. So I know what's interesting, Sierra, for one of the first clients that we tackled from this innovation perspective, they had about 1,400 PowerPoint slides. It was a 10-day curriculum, right? A lot of our programs train 10, 14, 21 days. Some of them, especially in the healthcare vertical, might have training programs that are 7, 8, 12 weeks long. And can you imagine being glued to a computer where the trainer is usually just reading off of PowerPoint slides? So this one client had 1,300 PowerPoint slides, and we completely dismantled that. We took it apart. We introduced a bunch of different methodologies, methods, learning assets, technologies, and it's now 0 PowerPoint slides, right? That doesn't mean we're taking the trainers out of the equation completely, but it's just different technologies so that we can engage with the learner, that we can boost what we call learning experience and learning engagement, right? That's really the holy grail of what we're doing.
So, okay, and I was going to ask this to the audience after this next question, but just so they all have a chance to chime in while you answer the next, on the topic of learning styles. I know there's a few different kind of general ways people learn. I know there was, just from what I've learned in school, there's kinetic, where I think it's like you actually do something and that's how you learn best. Or there's audio, which is where you can hear something and learn it, and visually. So just opening this up to the audience, like while we continue talking and we'll circle back to it, tell us how you learn best. What type of learner are you? Do you do, because another thing too, they say like life's greatest teacher is experience, but I think that kind of ties into what you're saying about how to like reframe the traditional, like, here, sit in front of these slides and learn this thing. Like, how do you kind of like simulate these, because working in customer service, like, you never know what is coming at you, or as an agent or something, you kind of have to be prepared for all scenarios until you learn how to deal with one or learn how to interact. But how do you and your team, how do you kind of like turn that around and create a new style of how to learn that?
I'm so glad that you asked me. And let's start by unpacking it's called the Vka hypothesis. So people are visual, auditory, and kinesthetic, right? This is one of the biggest myths out there in the training environment, and not just in the learning environment, but also, in the organizations in general. And this is exactly what I encountered when I transitioned from the academia to the corporate world. There were all these taxonomies and circles and pyramids that had absolutely no scientific evidence. There was no research done. It was all kind of like philosophical research, sitting in a chair kind of research. And a lot of the stuff that we kind of take for granted, or I should say learning professionals, not just learning professionals, managers in general, leaders take for granted, has absolutely no scientific evidence. So you just recited one of the biggest myths, which is that some of us are visual learners, some are auditory, some are kinesthetic, they need to touch things, right? So the human brain is wired in the way that the visual stimulus is processed the fastest and with most efficiency. We are all, by definition, biologically wired to learn better, faster, more efficient visually, right? And this just has to do with the biological makeup and the survival piece, right? That's really important for us. So we are all visual learners primarily, right? That doesn't mean that we're not going to learn through auditory input or through touch, right? Kinesthetically, right? But this is one of the things that we need to kind of get rid of, and it's been kind of challenging, but really rewarding for my team, because they come from all sorts of backgrounds, and they all come with like this baggage of like these myths and preconceptions about what learning is, and I'm slowly and surely we're kind of shedding that, right? And we're
Mhm.
really reading the literature on evidence-based learning, right? I'm all about the most efficient and effective techniques when it comes to learning. So you mentioned how we're transforming learning at TTEC, and we talk about the four big elements, right? When it comes to learning design, and mind you, this is pioneering work. We're doing proof of concept. We've been doing it for several months now, and we've tackled 2 clients so far, and we have 4 or 5 clients in the pipeline for the rest of the year. But we talk about these four big elements that cannot be missing in any learning design and delivery, right? So the first idea is that the learner is at the very heart of any learning experience, right? We want our learning to be learner centric, as we call it. And I always say to our trainers, TTEC has over 450 trainers, and I say to these guys, I love you guys. We love what you do. Hats off to you. But it's not about you. A learning experience is not about you. It's about the learners, right? So we're really focusing, I should say, obsessing about learner centricity. And we're drawing from different fields like cognitive psychology and neuroscience, user experience, user interaction, a lot of IT stuff and computer science stuff as well. And we are turning our learners from what we call traditionally they were just consumers. That's what they were. They would just consume these PowerPoint slides, and the trainer would just be talking, talking, talking at the learners, right? And we are turning our learners into prosumers. We want them to be not just consuming the material, the content, but to be producing the content. So I know this is a huge part of what we do. This is one of our biggest elements. It's really this learner centricity, and it's all about the learner, learning experience and user experience. And the second piece that my team is working on a daily basis, again, we have this obsession about social collaborative learning. Yes, learning is primarily a neurocognitive function, right? It starts here in the brain, but then we learn by sharing our knowledge, by reflecting upon the knowledge with our partners, with our learning partners, with our groups, with our coworkers, with our leaders, right? And this is where this social collaborative learning really kicks in. And we're doing this by employing different learning assets and methods and methodologies like virtual discussion forums, collaborative activities, which are very hands-on for the learners. So they're constantly touching things, moving things, reflecting upon things, sharing their knowledge. The third big element, Sierra, is gamification. We're really big on gamification, and there's different levels of gamification, if you will. It goes from like just gamification per se, which is the use of game elements and game mechanics in training, to game-based learning, to serious games, to video game-based learning. There's this whole suite of products that you can think of when it comes to gamification. But we know from research that some competition is healthy. Not every type of competition is healthy, but some competition is really healthy. And then fourth, last but not least, I should say, we obsess about practice. That's the magic word. And we understand practice completely differently from the majority of training teams out there, either within TTEC or outside of TTEC, right? Again, I said this is a lot of pioneering work, bringing cognitive psychology, neuroscience, user experience into learning design. But we believe, you've heard of the old adage that says practice makes perfect.
Yep.
Well, not true. Science says it's not practice that makes perfect. It's consistent, distributed, or spaced, effortful practice that makes perfect. So
Yep.
we know from research in cognitive psychology that practice needs to be frequent, right? It needs to be consistent. Think of it like you've probably heard of these language apps like Duolingo or Babbel, right? You need to be constantly practicing. You are learning through quizzing. You're constantly being quizzed. So in our learning design, we're constantly quizzing people like, 3, 4, 6, 7 times a day. You're doing these mini challenges. There might be 3, 4, 7 minute long, and you're constantly being quizzed as a learner. And it's distributed or spaced because research shows that if you space out training content in a period of time, the retention will be better. And that's just how our memory works. Again, it's how our brain is wired. So instead of cramming everything into a 1 afternoon session. You want to do 5 or 6 1-hour sessions, or maybe 10 half-an-hour sessions, right? Half-hour sessions. So we're consistently distributing practice, spacing it out, and we are using, and it's got to be effortful, I mentioned, right? It's got to hurt a little bit. It's got to be a little bit hard, right? Just a little bit of that component. And we're using different technologies for that. And we're very proud of our artificial intelligence bots, practice bots that we just rolled out for one of our clients. And they work like magic. And our learners, our trainees, do not only practice like 1 afternoon, but they practice every single day. Like, like I always tell my team, I always tell them, it's like practicing Duolingo, like 3-4 times a day, maybe after you eat, right? You kind of form that habit of practice either before you eat or after you eat or before you go to the bathroom, whatever it is. Research shows that that's the best type of practice, right? It becomes sort of habitual. And that's what we do with these bots that are powered by machine learning. So I'm very proud of that and of my team who's doing that. They're amazing.
Yeah. Well, and you mentioned, it's kind of funny. So there's at least like 2 or 3 old adages we just need to toss out the window.
Right.
The types of learning and the cramming, and then like the practice makes perfect sort of thing. And it's really funny because as you're talking, I've experienced it too. I grew up, in school you learn Spanish, and then I was trying to learn Norwegian, and I was on Duolingo doing these little quizzes. And it's funny because I'm trying to find, the phrase for how's it going, and the Spanish one comes to mind.
Right.
So it's funny, like these little centers in your brain, and how you
these
have
little
to like
snippets,
keep training.
yeah. That's how memory works. Yeah.
And we were laughing one time with the team. I said, like, oh, I got to pull that from my Rolodex, like back in my brain. So, but there's all these little file cabinets, and I think it's so, you don't know exactly, you can't keep track of what's in them all the time, but you have a lot of experience. And I think what's cool is your team is really figuring out how people can very reliably and consistently like learn something so that it becomes second nature. They know exactly where that is in the file cabinet, sort of thing. And you did say too, when we met first, that you have you wanted to bring academia over into this kind of BPO space, and because it is an opportunity maybe they don't realize is available. There's so much to learn and provide. And then you also mentioned on your team too, there are so many opportunities there, but very neat, these niche interests and skill sets in like learning and memory research and neuroscience. So it's just this whole, I think, and like I said at the top of the show, like this whole sector of TTEC that you don't even realize is like, but it's going to flow across, the entire business as well. And so I guess as a question to kind of like sum it all up, what does the future of learning look like for our TTECers?
That's a great question. And I love to think that it looks very bright. The future of learning looks very bright. And like I said, we're now only building proof of concepts with a couple of clients. We're moving into the 3rd one very soon. But once this becomes business as usual, I don't know if it's going to be a year from now, 18 months from now, 2 years from now, I believe that training is going to be very, very different. And it's going to, revolve around these 4 big elements: learner centricity, social collaborative learning, gamification, and practice, seen in a completely different way, so that our learners can really, they're not only having fun, because they're having fun. They're all saying, this is great, this is amazing. TTEC is such a differentiator in the BPO space when it comes to training. Those who have gone through our learning the reimagined curriculum, what we call the Learning 2.0 curriculum, but it's not enough. We can't stop there, right? We really want them to be able to retain more knowledge and to be able to transfer that knowledge to the job. right? And at the end of the day, the holy grail of a training organization is to show the bang for the buck, as I always say. So we want to show the organization that, yes, they're better agents, they're more prepared, they have better, the speed to proficiency was shorter, for example, right? So they have better quality scores on the phone once they hit the phones, for example. So I think the future of learning is really bright, and it's going to incorporate all these elements. And we're going to plug that into this, our metaverse, like you said before, which is going to be the future of learning, right? We're all going to be living in this virtual world where we're going to have all these technologies at our disposal. We'll be able to share knowledge. We'll be able to, really democratize knowledge, if you will, where everyone will be learning from each other, picking each other's brains, and sharing. That collaborative piece is going to be really important. And that interaction is going to be really important. So I think, I'm super excited about the future and what it holds for us, and especially for my team. And yeah, we'll just keep rocking. I have a small team now, Sierra, but I'm growing my team slowly but surely. And yes, if there's any people who want to join us and reach out, it's a very multidisciplinary team. And I think that goes back to your question about that niche in the academia. When I was in the academia, I had no idea about that training world out there in the corporate world, right? I had no idea. And how many people out there studying psychology, education, cognitive psychology, computer science, IT, these are the people on my team right now. They have all these different backgrounds. How many of them have never heard of, of this opportunity, have not had a chance about this opportunity of being a learning professional, a learning designer? I call my learning designers learning experience designers, LXD for short. And they come from all sorts of backgrounds, right? They've studied computer science, IT. Some of them studied learning science or psychology, even neuroscience. So I'm super excited. I think that's the future of learning, Sierra. The learning space is becoming more and more multidisciplinary, where we need professionals from all these other areas, right? It used to be just instructional design, your old school instructional design. Someone put a PowerPoint together and someone delivered that, so delivery. But now there's all these nuances of different professions out there. And I think when I'm speaking to fresh talent in colleges, there's so much opportunity out there in the learning space, right? You could be a learning experience designer, a user experience designer. You could be a trainer. You could be a learning technologies specialist, for example. You could be a learning analytics person, right? There's just all these other jobs that have popped up in the last 10 years or so. And the field is really dynamic and really exciting for that fresh talent out there. So I hope we can capture some of that as well through our show.
For sure. And I'm really excited to look back, like, okay, this episode, April 2022, but like look back on it, whether it's 2023 or just in 6 months or something like that. I think it's a very awesome time capsule of predicting where you're going to take TTEC through, to infinity and beyond, in a sense. Like this really amazing learning experience, because that helps everybody. But Dominic, thank you so much for I knew when you'd be on the show you'd have so much to share, and so thank you for joining us today. And we're so grateful for your time and the attention your team puts into training our TTECers with intent, and there's just so much to look forward to. So thank you so much for being here.
Of course. Thanks for having me, Sierra. Appreciate it.
Awesome. Yes, it's our pleasure, truly. And if you are now inspired to take part in what's to come at TTEC, let's take a look at some of these hot jobs on ttecjobs.com. Wow. What an exciting, I'm speechless, to be honest. So here, let's start at ttecjobs.com. This is where every episode we talk about this, but type in your keywords here. Maybe you want to, training. Maybe you're inspired after today's episode. Type that in, or maybe you're in Mexico City or in Kalispell, Montana, and you're looking for a role. You're going to be able to pull up all the roles by region or titles. I have to get my accent ready for this next one, but this is our featured job in Brazil. It is an especialista de vendas publicidade digital in Brazil. Sorry for my accent, but clearly this is a role for someone who is fluent in Portuguese. But let me tell you, it is very exciting because you will work as a sales consultant for one of the most respected companies in the world in online marketing. You'll be working with existing advertisers and new, small, and medium-sized businesses. You'll provide marketing and advertising solutions tailored to clients' commercial and advertising strategies. So very, very cool. And if you have previous telephone sales experience with an active sales approach of at least 6 months, and you have the ability to develop in a goal-oriented sales environment, this might be the role for you. And as mentioned, it is in Brazil. So all of our Brazil TTECers, prospective TTECers, head over to that job role. The next one, we have a senior benefits analyst, and this is remote. Our total rewards team brings significant value and contribution to our company by developing benefits plans and compensation programs that enable TTEC to attract, retain, and motivate our very best talent. So you're basically everybody's favorite person at TTEC, just so we're clear. And we are looking for someone who has the ability to work independently, prioritize workload, utilize a wide degree of creativity and to accomplish goals, understand business implications, decisions, and can complete projects with minimal supervision, with excellent written and oral communication skills, including the ability to communicate clearly with all levels within the organization, because this affects everybody, and it's super rewarding work, both in the job description itself and the task at hand. But that's it for our show today. I hope you enjoyed the talent show powered by TTEC, because TTEC is powered by our talent. I want to take a moment and thank our guest, Dominik Rus, again for joining us, as well as everyone who works to make this show possible. And of course, everyone who came out to spend a little time with us today. Check the comments. We had a very global and engaged audience. So thank you all for being here. We will see you again on April 21st for a special episode celebrating our ESGs and Earth Day. Have a good one.